Okay, so I've played the first actions of both sides after having, this is the 30 Years' War, after having resolved some of the initial stuff, the pillage recovery and the card draw. Pillage recovery, decision being made, the Protestants wanted to keep Vienna pillaged to make it harder to retake, because the pillage has to be paid for in the movement if the Imperials want to move, well, the Bavarians in this case want to move to attack it. There's actually still an Imperial leader there. Okay, but the other side was what card draw. I again wanted to note how tremendously tiny these decks are and how much control you have. You know, just it's getting reshuffled every turn basically because there aren't enough cards, or every other turn. I'm not sure. We're on the third turn, and I think I've reshuffled at least one of the decks last turn and again this turn. I know I reshuffled them both this turn because there are no discards, but I don't know which one ran out. I could probably look and see how many cards have been withdrawn. I know the Catholics have more withdrawals than the Protestants, but more total cards. So for card play, Protestants decided to bring the new Pope in. That'll prevent papal aid from coming into play. And the Catholics played the Spinola Besieges Breda card now, which added one to the Dutch war track. I had that accidentally moved ahead before, but it's in the right place now. And if the Protestants don't manage to get an army there, and right now they don't have one anywhere near there, they get the Dutch get affected by another level of on the war track, which will reduce the Dutch aid. We already discussed this somewhat, but I'm going to leave this card out somewhere so that I remember it. Yeah, I'll leave them both out. They're both discarded from the deck after this. For the second card plays for both sides, wow, what's that nasty dark spot? That's better. For the second card plays of both sides, they both played leaders. Protestants played Frederick of Baden, who strangely enough is named George. That's covered in the errata. He's George Frederick, but the card is misspoken, with the intention of getting him up to the United Provinces, and the Catholic response to that was to put Cordoba and 3 Spanish veterans in the Netherlands. That way outclasses what Baden has, so we may have to see what happens. But what we're seeing is the Dutch war is becoming kind of the focus here instead of what was going on around Vienna. I looked in the rules. As far as I can tell, it's not specific, but it's the only way I can interpret it. Baden goes over to the Protestants when this happens, but they also get the victory point total. And I put the wrong amount in. I gave them 3 instead of 2. But the total is now down to 18 because of this. Well, the Protestants were absolutely foolish here. They played a big card in order to move Baden, and they shifted him up to Mainz, putting it under siege, but mainly this was the direct route up to the United Provinces. It was within range of the Catholics playing a card to get Cordoba down to Mainz. That was actually an overrun. It just destroys the army, kills the leader, boom, it's over. And then they marched into Frankfurt and converted that for a victory point. They're allowed to only operate west of this red line. That's the Spanish zone. So the Protestants could have moved up, say, through Hesse Castle, violating it, but, well, in order to get there, they would have had to violate Württemberg too. It would have been a long way around. Maybe we'll see something happen here. It's hard to tell, though. It does not look pleasant for the Protestants. But they got some heavy card plays out of the Catholic hands. It's just they didn't get the effect they wanted, which was getting an army into the UP, which they weren't able to do. So the Protestants are going to try again, this time with Christian of Brunswick, who starts out in Brunswick-Lüneburg. There's not a lot the Catholics can do about this. They can't even really block it off, because Christian can come through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the Protestants could have blocked this then, or the Catholics could block this by violating Munster first, but then the Protestants can come down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Gotta let the Protestants do their, it's going to cost them 2 victory points to violate Brunswick, Kallenberg, and Munster in order to make it through to the United Provinces. We're going to allow that, but I played a card to move down and start grabbing territories in the Lower Palatinate. I can't do much about Baden, although I can take Strasbourg. And then, beyond that, I don't know what to do, but it doesn't seem like taking Vienna is terribly helpful right now. Although, without Vienna, it's going to be hard to supply the Imperial troops. Like, impossible. But that's okay, there are very few of them, so I'll live with that, right? Okay. 2 more card plays left, that's it. So the action phase is over. Spinola's siege failed because I got a sufficient Protestant army in place. The other one wouldn't have been. I'll remove these cards from play. Let me explain what happened, not much. The Protestants played Swedish Aid to get some more points. Remember, the Catholics already have gotten points. And the Catholics played a card they were thinking about holding till next turn. If they could have gotten this up, they would have gotten it maybe 2 more up then. They played it for actions to move Cordoba's armory around, and they're setting up a siege in the Lower Palatinate. Right now I've got to pay troops, and then make a roll on the sieges. I'll come back right after that. Well, as usual, I noticed a rule that I missed. The cost for paying units is higher than I thought. It's $2 for anything except militia instead of $1. I was charging $1 each. So I would have had to make more rolls before. Just let it pass at this point. The Protestants actually got lucky. All their troops were fine on the rolls this time. The Catholics not so lucky. John George got a 2 pillage and lost a step. And we got pillage marker over here under the Spaniards, who were mostly paid, but they only had $12 total. The Protestants only had $6 total. Not enough to run this war as it stands right now. I'm beginning to see some of the cool aspects of this game. At first I thought, you can pay everything you need. What the hell? Maybe it'll get more bloody as it goes. Well, no, you can't pay everything you need unless you keep your armies small and focus on building lots of troop points. The siege of, Mannheim was successful. And so Cordoba, that was the 3rd city in the Lower Palatinate. That means the entirety, which in this case was just Heidelberg, goes over to the Catholics, along with 3 victory points, which brings the Catholics up to 23 points, doing a little better. At this point, we get to choose to discard cards. Protestants will throw that. Catholics will throw that. Neither one wants to hold those cards. They're kind of cheap. And we go to the 4th turn. Papal Aid will be back in play. And let's start this one. Okay, so after the beginning of the turn things, Protestants got a really poor roll, so they only got to remove 2 items. And they took them from Leipzig, figuring they still want to keep Vienna pillaged and try to pay things off there as much as possible. Catholics got a good roll, and I think they got rid of all of theirs. The card situation has gotten downright ridiculous. There's like 10 cards in each deck at this point. basically you're facing the same hand each turn, which is kind of weird to me. It means you have a lot of pre-knowledge. There's not a lot of luck in what you're drawing anymore. But it's kind of disturbing to me in a CDG to see this. I'm not sure how bad it is. Something makes me feel like there should be more randomness available. I don't know. Protestants played Urban VIII becomes Pope card. That goes back in their deck. It doesn't kill the card, which makes them much more willing to play this. And that means there will be no more papal aid as long as he's Pope. That's pretty potent. And the Spaniards, well, the Catholics, whatever. They call the others the Dutch, the Protestants, I don't know. Moved to Metz and started sieging that. Their goal was, let's get them into the Spanish Netherlands, be able to, actually they could move most of them there. So they only need 4 strength points to siege Metz. And I'll bring 2. They moved from Mannheim 1, 2, 3, 4, and started the siege. The reason that they wanted to move was to get some of their units being paid automatically in the Spanish Netherlands. But then they said, well, if I'm moving anyway, I might as well start generating some more victory points. I want to get my victory point total up as high as I can, and maybe try to shoot it over the 30 mark somewhere around here. But as soon as I started thinking that, I'm like, I gotta take the extra thing if I'm doing the action now. All right, so that's 1 action each. The Protestants launched another attack on Linz, and you can see they took the pillage for their movement there. They played both their combat cards, but that only gave them a net of +1 because Mercy's a pretty good leader. They were defeated and lost a bunch of Hungarian troops. Hard to tell what's going on there, but they probably can't afford another move there because they'll take attrition losses, unless of course they go through this way. That route will allow them to pillage, and they'd be able to gain Salzburg back. What have the Catholics been doing in the meanwhile? And nobody's gathered up any foreign aid, which is kind of a tricky spot to be in because there's only 3 card plays left. The Catholics have moved through and taken Brunswick-Lüneburg, which is worth a couple victory points, and now they're working on Brandenburg. That's an electorate. That'll leave only Bohemia as an electorate in the Protestant hands if they manage to get it. And Brandenburg doesn't look hard to get. They only have to take 1 more city. Now it has a couple more cities in it, but that'll all fall if the Catholics can take it. And it looks pretty easy, actually. The only problem is they've got John George there, and he is hard to get moving. All right. So the turn's card play has ended up, Spanish grabbed 7 points of support, but they managed to move the Spanish forces into Liege, where they'll be paid for, and they have control of Metz, which gave them some victory points. They're up to 27 now. They're getting close to bringing that intervention card into play. Protestants got 6 again off the Swedish aid card, which is the best that they could do off what they have. Now, we have an interesting situation. Gabor went back and raised up a couple units in Pressburg, mainly because, hey, they'll be free there, they'll be paid for there, I believe, I hope. It's so hard keeping track. Hungarians in Hungary are paid locally. Cool. They didn't have cards to move John George around, and he's got no, that's actually a Catholic force. He's got kind of a problem out there. He's probably not going to have enough money to pay because I have to keep Mercy's Bavarians paid. Unfortunately, Mercy can't raise any more reinforcements. He lost the imperial leader he had with him, and Bavarians can't recruit in Austria. That's going to be a real problem, as he's looking at two Protestant armies next to him. He's decided because of that he can't launch an attack. He can keep defending, but he can't do much else. And that's okay, because the Catholics are making gains. Up in Brandenburg, they're pulling that, and they'll be able to move down into Bohemia as well. And then over here where Cordoba is, he can move into Munster. And that's about it for him. He can't go into France until France is in the war. It's kind of sad to have Spinola up here, because he's pretty good, but Cordoba's almost as good, so that's fine. What else do we have? And I can't pull Spinola out. Once he's in the United Provinces, he's stuck there. I'm not sure if the war ends if he can get out, but so now I've got the there's not going to be any sieges to resolve. I've got to pay off the units, which is going to be kind of interesting this time. And then I have to decide what I'm discarding. And the Catholics are going to discard their loser card. There's not much more that they have. The Protestants played 2 combat cards, so they are out of cards, you can see. Okay, let's do the payoffs. Well, that's the end of the 4th turn. And what do we got? Well, Hungarians died off in Vienna. Mercy lost the last Imperial unit that he had here. Saxons lost a unit up here. And we see the Saxons here continue to pillage. Now I can do a free move to get them out of there into someplace less painful to live. By free move, it's still one of my actions, but it won't be a card. And interestingly enough, Thurn's force is still standing pretty strong. I'd kind of like to hit Mercy with that, because, well, we'll see how the supply goes. But yeah, it's beginning to look like the Bavarians are not going to be able to hold out in Austria, and that's kind of painful. I'm trying to remember victory conditions. I know are Vienna, Munich, and I think the other one is Brussels. Brussels is going to be real hard to take, at least without French help. So, but if this line breaks, Bavaria becomes open. On the other hand, the Catholics are gaining a lot of territory. Brandenburg falls, that's another electorate. If Bohemia is threatened, that could be huge with the 1 card. We've got the Edict of Restitution, which is 5 victory points, and we've got the electoral meeting, which if we get all electors, that's 3, plus all electors is another 5. So there could be a lot of points coming in play at once. That's kind of what the Catholics are planning on here. They want to bring all those points in just as the French are coming in, and maybe they can offer a limited peace or not. Historically, it looked like the emperor actually got the agreement for the peace, but then things kind of went badly and the war continued. Alright, I'm going to send this one up.